able to produce methanol. As a result, except for Assam Petrochemical, which was able to supply methanol for the blending, there was no other agency which was supplying. So import was the only option. So now we are putting up a paper with the government that we can go for 15% blending of methanol in gasoline. It has been tested, tried out, cleared by ARAI for all kinds of automobiles, including two-wheeler, including four-wheelers of Maruti, Samsung and all, and 50,000 kilometers. You don't have to change any part. As it is, you can use it. After 50,000 kilometers, you need to change the rubber and plastics, which is a very nominal expenditure as far as the conversion is concerned. So policy paper is being issued, and shortly the government will come up with the final answer on that.
On methanol only, we have another question from Mr. Pradyuk Maji. He is asking, is government thinking on notifying methanol price for coal to methanol to safeguard domestic production against imported methanol?
Yeah, when we do the coal to methanol plant, particularly surface coal gasification, as we are talking, all the incentives which we are going to produce, which we are going to put in place, will be only to make the methanol price competitive. Whether it is the cost of the coal, or it is the incentives on the capital equipment procurement, or it is on the taxation, or it is on power, or it is on oxygen supply. So all of them will be actually tailored to ensure that the chemicals, not only methanol, chemicals which are produced using the gasification process are competitive, and it makes our country self-reliant. So to that extent, if there's a need for us to provide, to impose certain kind of duties on the import, that will also be one of our options.
Then we have one question from Kalpit Dubey. He's asking any policy on underground coal gasification.
As I mentioned in my speech,
sir, yes, sir, you may take it. Yeah.
Yeah, regarding underground coal gasification, the commercially it is not very well accepted thing. We had approved a policy on underground coal gasification, and Neyveli Lignite Corporation and Coal India Limited had planned one project each under R&D route to develop a pilot scale for underground coal gasification. Actually, what one fellow speaker was telling, in Vastan, the ONGC, they have stopped working R&D work on that. Actually, we had planned to give that block to ONGC, but ONGC has not come up. There was a problem in UK and Australia. There's an environmental concerns. Even after pilot scale study, they have scrapped their project. So thinking about Australia and UK, we are not very much interested in the first phase for underground coal gasification. Right now, in the first stage, we are thinking about surface coal gasification, and R&D route for underground coal gasification will continue.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now we have one question from Mr. Durgesh. He is asking, any kind of coal gasification plant and ceramic industry at Morbi, Gujarat are banned. No one can use. How can we start coal gas plant? It's related to ceramics, sir, at Gujarat.
So, Monica, can I answer?
Yes, sir. Please do. Varun, sir, you are not audible to us. We can't hear you, Varun, sir. I think your internet is a little slow.
I can answer this partly because I'm aware of the problem.
Sure, sir. Please.
The problem was brought to Niti Aayog, and we found that it was a local restriction imposed by the Pollution Control Board in that particular area, and it has nothing to do with the process. The process is absolutely clean, it is not polluting. But since some kind of a generalized thing was there, so the Pollution Control Board finally said that it has to get some clearance from the Central Pollution Control Board and all that. And it was more a bureaucratic kind of a hindrance rather than any technical hitch. So we had initiated dialogue with both these agencies to give them relief. and allow the process which has been developed by the agency like NIT Surat and one industry there for the tile manufacturers in that region who are using the syngas for the purpose of sintering of the tiles using the coal gasification process. So it is not a problem of technology, it is a problem of some bureaucracy which needs to be resolved.
Okay, so we have one question from Isha Bakar from CRISIL. She wants to know how competitive coal to gas is in comparison to domestic and imported gas. Maybe Mr. V.R. Sharma would like to answer that. Mr. V.R. Sharma?
Monica, can you hear me now?
Varun sir, I can hear you. This question is
I like to add something. So I like to add something to what Dr. Saab said.
Okay.
You see what happened, Dr. Saab, in Gujarat, most of the people were using a technology where they used water scrubbing to clean the gas. So the water was taking the phenols, and the State Pollution Control Board told them that you shift to a technology which is indirect cooling. And most of them did not do it, and they kept on throwing the phenolic water in the drains without treating that. And that is why those were banned. And the case in the High Court and NGT has our submissions also, where we have told them that this technology of water scrubbing can be replaced by indirect cooling.
In fact, the technology which I am talking about does not use this water scrubbing at all. In fact, it is done by Professor Chiniwala and company.
Yeah, but the banned gasifiers, 700 of them are water scrubbing type.
Yeah, so they clubbed the new ones also with those 700 and this also.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so now can we have this question for Isha Bakar? She wants to know competitiveness coal to gas in comparison to domestic and imported gas.
Yes, may I answer this?
So please.
Good. Thank you very much. So first of all, very, very informative, and there are so many things coming out. And thanks to Dr. Saraswatji, he has been clarifying everything, and he has found as a technocrat, as a policy maker, that what is the solution. So thank you, sir. Thank you for everything. But now regarding imported coal versus Indian coal, the basic purpose of coal gasification in India is how to become Atmanirbhar, how to utilize Indian high ash coal, how to use our own resources which God has bestowed us for millions of years, and not the resources of the foreign suppliers, and make them rich. Today, unfortunately, 250 million ton of thermal coal is coming in India, which is equivalent to 500 million ton of domestic coal in terms of calorific value. So, but most of the coal which comes to India, it comes in basically in 0 to 10 millimeter, basically for power plants or for some other applications. So we, especially in our gasifier, we need 5 to 50 mm size, and very difficult to bring coal of 5 to 50 millimeter from outside. And being a landlocked plant, we have to again transport it from port to the interiors of the country. So in our as per our calculations, when we take the imported coal, the cost is about $6 to $7 per MMBTU. But if the domestic coal is available, and which is available because we are at the pit head, more than 60 to 70 billion ton of coal is in the vicinity of 7 to 10 kilometers radius of ours. So there is no point that we should import the coal, because if the coal is available at a reasonable price, then I think at $3 per MMBTU we can produce the gas. As far as one more thing, I would like to tell you that whatever gas we are making, syngas, it has less than 2 ppm of sulfur. So we recover sulfur, we recover ammonia, we recover phenol, we recover gas oil, and we recover tar. All are these high grade items, and we sell them in the domestic market for different applications. So this is again a very good business. So the Rectisol process we are using, the same process of Rectisol was being used in Talcher when the first Cooper's plant with entrant flow came. Cooper's was a German company. It came in Talcher, and which ran I think about 25 years. I visited that plant when we were doing the erection and commissioning of our Angul plant. So when I saw that plant, I found that technology in 1971 was also excellent for the coal gasification, and they also had Rectisol. So they also had all those facilities what we are doing now. So this means it is a very mature technology, and we must learn from China,
Right.
And we must use only the domestic coal.
Right.
This is what I want to say.
Right, sir. And the same question I want to ask from Mr. Atanu Mukherjee from Dastoor. How do you make gasification techno-economically viable and successful? Mr. Atanu, you're on the line.
Yeah, so I think what I would say is that it totally depends upon a lot on the coal characteristics and the coal
Mr.
economics,
Atanu, please
right?
turn on your video. Please turn on your video.
Video, can you see me? Hello?
Sir, we can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, I think maybe I'll do with that. I don't know, for some reason it's not showing.
Yeah.
So I think, like I said, techno-economics is everything in coal gasification, right? And the coal, the feedstock is very, very important, right? I don't know how you get that coal. More important than the quality of the coal. The quality of the coal can be 35% ash. I can wash it down to 30% ash. I can get a domestic coal from captive mines. The point is that, specifically in certain gasifiers, the consistency of that quality or non-quality.
Atanu, sir, please unmute your mic.
Is not there. Then you've got a problem in terms of gasifier operation. That's what happens when you deallocate mines and when you have what you call your source coal from different places, and you have got to do all these kind of things that destroys the entire operational model of the gasifier. So it's not so much about the quality and the range of the coal in terms of its quality, but it's the consistency of what you get. That's the most important thing, right, in gasifier. So if you have consistent coal, high ash coal, you typically with credits would get $3 to $4 per MMBTU if it's a captive coal mine within the boundaries of the place. But on the other hand, if I take gas from outside, right now Henry Hub is at about it's converging to LNG. Spot price is delivered about $2. But in general, long term, LNG would be about $7, $8 shipped into India. You take a $1.5 regasification charge and transportation charge, you're talking about $9 to $10 in terms of landed cost of LNG in terms of CH4 methane gas. So there's a clear delta. It's a clear delta in terms of what the value of the gasification of syngas is going to be, depending upon the type of coal that you got. So that's why the techno-economics is dependent a lot on the coal. Techno-economics is dependent a lot on the scale, and the techno-economics is dependent a lot on how you operate it for what kind of product basket.
Absolutely. So we have one more question from Suraj Prasad from Iron and Steel Company. Yes, sir.
Monica.
Sir.
I would like to add one point.
Right, sir.
All of that has been said. We are talking about LNG versus syngas. When you convert LNG or SNG into syngas, there is a clear conversion cost of $2 per MMBTU. That we are missing. So when we are talking SNG or LNG and syngas, we have to give advantage to syngas by $2 because this is CO and S2. This is not CH4.
So let me just take one point out there. So I'm talking about in terms of energy value. Okay, I'm not talking about syngas being utilized for only steel. I'm talking about using syngas versus CH4 in terms of energy value for energy use, right? So that's the typical metric you will use. Yes, certainly if you want to convert that into syngas in reforming, steam methane reforming, something of that sort, it's going to take $2. Certainly, yes. But from an energy basis, there's a $6 to $7 differential delta on a run rate, long-term run rate.
Just 1 minute, I would like to come in here. The main point you have to miss is the cost of producing syngas by methane reforming or the natural gas reforming, or cost of producing syngas by using coal. Now, if you take the imported coal, imported cost of the natural gas, as you mentioned, with all the conversion costs, transportation costs, everything, $8 to $10. Vis-a-vis whatever is the coal cost which are going to be there today, that comparison has to be made. Except for the fact that there it is steam reforming, here also it is a coal gasification. These costs, when you compare, you will find that at the end of the day, with the right kind of a scale of operation, with the right kind of the coal quality and the cost, the syngas produced from coal is going to be cheaper compared to the syngas produced from the natural gas, imported natural gas. So I think the debate ends there.
I think let's have 2-3 more questions and then we can finish the session. One question we have from Mr. Suraj Prasad from Arya and Steel Company, Barbel. He's asking, we are facing problem in measuring the syngas flow due to high tar content in the gas. Kindly let us know which is the best method for measuring the gas. Who would like to answer this?
I didn't follow the question at all.
He is saying we are facing problems in measuring the syngas.
You're not clear. Monica, your communication is being distant.
Am I audible now? Am I audible to you now? So the question is, we are facing problem in measuring the syngas flow due to high tar content in the gas. Kindly let us know which is the best method for measuring the gas. Anyone can answer.
Can I reply this, Monica?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so there are three ways to measure flow. This is temperature differential, pressure differential, and the all three require probes, and all three of them they are very sensitive to tar. So in case you want to measure gas flow, you have to come down the tar levels of below 30 mg. So there are no instruments in the world right now which can operate below 30 mg of tar.
Okay. There's one gentleman from MSPL. He would like to answer. He would like to ask a question. Mr. Krishna Kumar. Mr. Krishna Kumar.
Good evening, Mr. Sharma. It's really inspiring that TSP installed the world's first coal gasifier-based DRI plant. India's sponge iron capacity is 45 million tons, but the capacity utilization is only 65%.
Please be a little louder.
Yeah, sure. So India's capacity of sponge iron is around 45 million tons, but our capacity utilization is only 65%. You have shown us the ray of hope that we can produce DRI at 12,000 rupees per metric ton, and this will, the Indian sponge iron producers will become the lowest producer in the world. But sir, I just wanted to know, do you think that the royalty of 14% and any DMF and GST compensation is of 400 rupees, do you feel that the taxation will be becoming the biggest hindrance to attract investment for the development of the coal gasification in India?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is
Sharma sir, please unmute your mic.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a very relevant question. We have already taken up this matter with Government of India about the 400 rupees, that is compensation cess. We have already taken this matter with Government of India, and we have requested them that to please waive this compensation cess. And I think for all domestic goods as well as for exports. For export is already waived, but we are now working and we are requesting to government to please waive it for the domestic products also. Hopefully this will be done. This is what the various government authorities they have assured us that yes, we are working very seriously. As far as the cost is concerned, you are right. We can produce from the Indian coal, high ash coal, we can produce DRI today at a price of 12,000 rupees per ton, whereas the normal kilns where the efficiency is very low, and there we are unable to produce at 12,000. The price there is about 13,500 rupees to 14,000 rupees a ton. So there is a direct advantage of about 2,000 rupees minimum in producing the DRI. And this DRI has good carbon level, 1.9 to 2%, which helps in melting it faster in electric arc furnace route. Because DRI through SRN kilns, the rotary kilns, that contains only carbon 0.5%, whereas here they contain carbon 0.05%, and here is the carbon is 1.9%. So this is a great advantage. So this is how, and this is why JSPL started this project. And we were struggling for the coal, but now Government of India, Coal Authority of India, Coal Ministry, we are thankful to them that they are increasing their production and they are providing the coal. So the plant is running now. So we are expecting a proper linkage with a particular mine so that we can get coal on uninterrupted basis. And once it comes, then I think it will be good. One more thing I'd like to tell you, that this DRI plant, what we have put up with a coal gasification, will bring a lot of foreign investment also in the country, because many plants will come, those who will produce DRI or HBI, and they'll be exporting out of India. And the iron ore fines, which today we are exporting, there are no need to export those iron ore fines of low grade, that is 58 to 60%, to rest of the world. These iron ore fines can be beneficiated and they can be utilized to produce pellets, and the pellets can be used fully to produce DRI. So there is an advantage of that the dust pollution will be removed. The advantage is that the coal pollution will be removed. The advantage is the thermal efficiency as against our Rankine cycle will be improved, and we can get benefit from all four sides. So this is the technology of today and tomorrow and day after tomorrow. So we have to utilize it.
Sharma,
Sooner the country comes in this, it will be better.
Sorry, we have another question, and there's a lot of disturbance coming. Just we will take 2 more questions and then we will end up the session. We have a question from Mr. Dilip Kumar Parida. He has asked this question from all the panelists. He is asking on the scenario strategy forcing the disruption happening in renewable and war against fossil fuel. Countries are exploding to transport moon dust and generate power through nuclear power through fusion to restrict carbon emission to 0 by 24. How do you forecast conventional coal as fuel and for how many years? Anyone can answer this question.
I can take that if you want to.
Yes, sir, please.
So I think, there's this whole thing about renewables and conventional fuel systems and the debate around that. Fact of the matter is the following, right? That if you take the renewables and if you use it for example, base load power with a definition of base load power as what it should be, then you will see that the cost of renewables is very, very high, because the corresponding storage systems, the backup systems, the grid integration is a very, very high cost, right? So it is not exactly true that renewables are going to give you the kind of cost structures that you have with the, you have to have, I think what you will have going forward is the right balance between renewables and conventional fossil fuel-based systems, either for production of energy or for the production of feedstock for materials, right? And I think it'll be a combination of things like carbon capture, things like low carbon fuels, like hydrogen, for example. Hydrogen manufactured from coal and natural gas is a very attractive proposition with carbon capture in terms of fuels which are zero emissions, right? So you will see a basket of these combinations happening, right? And nuclear certainly is going to be there, but I think the cost of nuclear is so high in terms of a per unit cost of energy, and there is nothing in the horizon. I mean, this is traveling wave nuclear reactors that Bill Gates and his company is doing, but that's really far out. So I think you will see a combination of these conventionals, hydrogen, along with carbon capture and renewables be the feedstock for both power as well as for what we call materials going into the future.
So I would like to request the views of Mr. Rajesh Jha as well on this, and Dr. Mukesh Kumar as well. So, Mr. Rajesh,
Yeah,
would you like to say
I
anything?
think Monica, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Very much.
Yeah. This coal gasification is the only technology where after burning coal, carbon, you get CO2 in the purest form. That is, you can straight away utilize that. And if the renewable cost comes down drastically, which in the last 10 years, it has come down by 99%. If the renewable cost comes down drastically, we would be happier because all that CO2 that we generate combined with the hydrogen that comes from renewable energy, which is at throwaway cost, and combine that to make methanol, we will be very happy. This complements each other.
Right. So, Dr. Mukesh, would like to comment on this renewable energy versus conventional energy?
Yeah, only just what Mr. Rajesh has told. I just want to add one thing. The type of this coal gasification technology changes are taking place. Just see ASPL plant itself, where we are having a high pressure gasifier. And once we are having a high pressure gasifier, but the gas used in your iron steel making it as at a low pressure. So what we are doing is at first step itself, we are using that reduction in pressure and converting it to the power. So one power is coming in. Then second thing, whatever the off gases are there from the iron and steel furnace, like a Midrex plant is there, then those gases we are collecting and again converting into a bioethanol. And bioethanol is again a fuel there. So what we are seeing is, if you see the overall cycle in this coal gasification process and the type of energy, whatever we are capturing there. So if you compare the overall, this renewable, talking solar energy and other things, it is not available 24 hours. Storage is a problem. So if you consider on a 24-hour basis, once we consider all these options there, like bioethanol making through carbon dioxide capturing, then power generation through gas reduction. So these will become more because renewable energy cannot meet that type of requirement.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Mukesh. So here we end.
Monica,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
there was so much discussion.
Okay. So we can have last words from Dr. Saraswat and Mr. Piyush.
I have one point. Yeah, please go ahead. Who is on the line?
Piyush, sir, please continue.
Sir, this is Piyush. Yeah. I just wanted to add two things. During the discussions, it has been considered that quality of coal supplied for coal gasification, maintaining that quality is very important. Second thing, a lot of concern has been about the GST compensation which is being levied. I'll tell you two things. To maintain the quality, if you own the mine, it will be best. You can maintain the quality as per your choice. Second thing is GST compensation says if the ownership lies with the same person and if it is in the same state, there will be no GST compensation. So right now the opportunity is there. A lot of blocks are option for commercial mining and coal gasification purpose. We are giving incentives to go for this, maintain the quality, avoid GST compensation, and do coal gasification. Thank you.
Very good.
Dr. Saraswat, you like to conclude it?
Yeah, I have three suggestions after listening to all of you. I think there's a very strong case for coal gasification, for energy, for steel plants, for a variety of other applications. And I see no reason why this country should not utilize the huge coal reserve which we have today. The comparisons of energy production from renewables and all that, what has been said is the most valid thing. But in the coal gasification cycle, the biggest thing which is coming and which probably we did not address as much as we should have done is the carbon dioxide capture and utilization. So I would request that the community here, which is already producing lots of carbon dioxide from the steel plant, lots of carbon dioxide from the thermal power plants, lots of carbon dioxide from variety of the refineries and all that, they should get into this process of combining carbon dioxide with hydrogen produced from renewable energy. hydrogen produced from renewable energy and then convert it into methanol or equivalent chemicals for that purpose. And then when we do the costing of the surface coal gasification projects, it should not be only for one application. It should be a total integrated island of syngas which will be utilized for energy production, chemicals production, gas to liquid, and variety of other applications, because then it will make it more cost effective and competitive with respect to other processes. If you only look at one direction, you will find that you are at disadvantage there. So this is the second part. Last 7 years after interacting with the community in our country, I have come to one conclusion, that our design houses, particularly the consultancy firms which are engaged today with the either fertilizer projects or with the steel projects, or this, most of them are depending upon all the process and the technology inputs that come from outside. They have not been able to come up with their own assessment and their own processes of any kind. And as a result, whatever is being given by the foreign companies, we are simply putting it into a different kind of a cover and supplying it to the ultimate user. Now, this is basically increasing the cost, and we have no way of identifying what is the real cost which is involved in setting up the plant. And at the time of tendering stage, when you negotiate and discuss with him, they talk like you take it or drop it. You know, that kind of a situation, because there is no technological base available in this country to negotiate on technology grants. This was seen during the Talcher fertilizer negotiation, and I could not do much because the base in our country was so limited. So companies like M&S2, companies like Engineers India Limited, companies like PDIL, who have been engaged in doing consultancy in refineries, steel, petrochemicals, fertilizers for the last 50, 60 years, I think they should develop adequate capability in these areas. So that would certainly require that they have to work with the agencies who understand the technology, and hence the R&D gaps which are there today. So the investment has to be done in the R&D also. That's why we have started these pilot projects which have been taken up to basically understand the processes, so that we can be at par while talking to the foreign companies. Otherwise, the Chinese will take you for a big ride, I want to tell you. They will simply not do anything, and then you will be paying extremely high capital cost of the equipment, and it will not be competitive. Third is whatever plants we are going to put, they all have to come close to the pit head. So the issue of transporting coal, transporting gas, and all that should be completely minimized. And the taxation structure, which Piyush is here, and I would also work with the Ministry of Coal, we have to make it in such a manner that all the taxation, whether it is the sales or it is the GST or it is the other regulatory taxes, whichever are there, they are made for coal gasification so simplistic that it makes the process competitive. Unless that happens, we will not be in a position to meet the competition which is being given by the imported gas or many other things which are going to be dumped on you as a cheap methanol or cheap chemical, and then ultimately, like it has happened in the last 50 years, the coal gasification process will suffer. And what is happening in Angul, that they are not getting the right quality of coal, and hence a plant which has been there in existence for lasting, I think, 15, 20 years, and we are not in a position to use it effectively. So these are some of the issues I thought the community here should live up to and work together. We are ready to provide the necessary support from NITI Aayog, and anybody who is willing to join this team is welcome, and your efforts are always required for taking this process further forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saraswat. And all we understand is this particular coal gasification needs a thorough follow-up. And Dr. Saraswat, Mr. Piyush, they are quite approachable. So I would urge all the companies who are interested to put gas, they should consult NITI Aayog, and they should also consult Mr. Atanu Mukherjee from M&S2. They have a wonderful solution for coal gasification. And with this, I would like to thank our panelists, Dr. Vijay Kumar Saraswat, Mr. V.R. Sharma, Mr. Rajesh, Mr. Partha Jana, Dr. Mukesh Kumar, Mr. Piyush Kumar, Mr. Tanu Mukherjee, and Mr. Varun Kumar, and all to our wonderful participants who have kept a lot of patience and have sat for almost 2 hours. We will meet again in our next webinar. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.